Lonnie Franklin Jr. was born on August 30th, 1952 in Los Angeles, California. Lonnie's life started regularly and normally, unlike a lot of other serial killers that I have covered. Lonnie is different because he had a normal childhood. The most significant part of Lonnie's childhood was that he was never very proficient in school. He always seemed to get bad grades in school. What he did excel in was very much hand-skilled labor. He enjoyed working with his hands, such as yard work and working with cars. When he graduated high school, his father recommended that he join the military since he wasn't going to go to college. While his time in the military was short-lived, he did manage to commit a horrific crime. He and a couple of his army friends kidnapped and gang-raped a girl in Stuttgart, West Germany in April 1974. He would take pictures of the assault, which is something that he would repeat with his other victims. The victim would also take down Lonnie's number, which is how the authorities were able to track him down. He would be dishonorably discharged from the military shortly after the crime. He then worked as a sanitation worker for the city of Los Angeles and also for the LAPD as a mechanic that worked on patrol cars and other things dealing with cars. However, that job did not last long, and Lonnie got a job working for the sanitation department of Los Angeles. He would collect and pick up garbage, which familiarized him with Los Angeles alleyways. Lonnie's first victim was Deborah Renee Jackson, whose body was found in an abandoned alleyway on August 10, 1985. Then, his second victim was Henrietta Wright, who was found in an alleyway and just like Deborah was found dead with 3 bullet holes. Much like Chester Turner, these crimes were first interpreted as single crimes that different people committed. Also, since both of these women were drug addicts and prostitutes, these crimes were not investigated. His third victim was Barbara Benu Ware, who was found again in an abandoned alleyway, but was a significant victim because someone saw it and called the police to report it.
Yes, I'd like to report a murder or a dead body or something.
Where at?
The address is 1346 East 56th Street in the alley. You know, he threw her out. The only thing that's hanging out of this, like he threw a gas tank on top of her, and the only thing you can see out is her feet.
Okay, what's your name?
Huh?
What's your name?
Oh, I don't stand anonymous. I know too many people. Okay then, bye-bye.
All right.
Many believe it was Lonnie himself, as it is impossible to see someone dump a body from the alleyway he is talking about. Bernita Roche Sparks was found dead with 3 bullet holes in her chest. Lonnie's next victim was Mary Catherine Lau. She was found dead the day after Halloween as she was out to a Halloween party. Once again, her body was found dumped in an alleyway as she had 3 bullet holes in her chest. Latricia Denise Jefferson was also found dead, but she had AIDS written on a napkin on her face. This shows that the killer thought these women were less than human because he would leave their lifeless bodies in alleyways near trash because in his mind these women were trash. Next was Alicia Monique Alexander, who was found dead on September 11, 1988. After finding Alicia, police officers could no longer deny that a serial killer was responsible for the murders, as in total Lonnie had killed 7 women from January 1984 to September 1988. However, Lonnie's next victim would prove to be the most vital piece of evidence that would ultimately end up putting him behind bars. Anitra Margaret Washington was the only survivor of Lonnie. He would pick her up after she was walking home, and he would offer her a ride home. Anitra accepted the ride, and he would then shoot her and dump her body in an alleyway. However, Anitra would survive this attack. She would provide a detailed description and tell the police the type of car the suspect drove. And she remembered that he sexually assaulted her while she was fading in and out of consciousness. Most importantly, she remembers that the perpetrator had a camera with him and took a photograph of her during the assault. After Lonnie heard about the fact that Anitra lived, he would go into hiding. He knew that police officers would connect the dots soon enough and realize that he was a serial killer who dumped all the bodies in alleyways, used the same type of gun and bullets, and the officers would connect the MO to him. He would attack Anitra on November 2nd, 1988, and then he wouldn't have any other known victims for another 14 years. On March 19, 2002, he would once again kill again. This is how he got the nickname of the Grim Sleeper, as he would have a long dormant period between murders. Princess Cheyenne Berthomew would be his first victim after his long period of dormancy. She would fit his MO of targeting women who were vulnerable, such as prostitutes, drug addicts, and runaways. Princess had been in and out of foster care her whole life. She had been found in an alleyway, however Lonnie had changed his MO. Instead of shooting the girls, this time he would strangle them. This not only shows an increased level of anger, but that this time each kill was more personal and intense. Valerie Louise McCorvey was his next victim. Just like Princess, she was found strangled to death in an alleyway. Lonnie Franklin Jr.'s last confirmed victim was Janice Levitt Peters, who he strangled and shot. Janice was left behind in a dumpster on January 1st, 2007. In the early 2000s, the LAPD had around 6,000 to 9,000 unsolved murders. Lonnie was fortunate enough that he killed his victims in Los Angeles in the late 80s and early 90s, because Los Angeles was filled with crime from gangs and drugs. However, it is hard to ignore the LAPD's incompetence, because in contrast to the killings done by Richard Ramirez, another serial killer in California, who targeted women in upscale areas, the killings done by Lonnie Franklin Jr. were not covered by the media as much, which is very important because the LAPD resources were stretched thin as serial killers were operating in the area. In order to counterbalance this, the community members formed the Black Coalition Fighting Back Against Serial Murderers. In 2010, LAPD formed the 800 Task Force, which consisted of 6 detectives that were focused on solving all the unsolved murders that had been committed in South Central Los Angeles. This task force was founded under Chief Bill Barton, as the murder of Janice Peters proved that all the murders were the work of one person. The public had no idea that a killer walked among them until the LA Weekly, a newspaper, let the public know that the LAPD was confident that it was just one killer they were after, which is how Lonnie got his name, the Grim Sleeper, due to the fact that he had gone 14 years without killing. This outraged the public, as for years the police didn't release any information about who they were looking for, a description or drawing. The police didn't even tell the families of the victims who were they looking for. However, who ended up identifying Lonnie wasn't a victim or family member of a victim, but his own family, more specifically his son. Lonnie had left his DNA all over the crime scene and on the victims' bodies. His blood, sperm, and saliva were all present in most of the crime scenes that police had. The police ran the perpetrator's DNA through their database to see if it matched the DNA of anyone in their database, but it didn't. Police officers then checked the perpetrator's DNA using familial DNA analysis. This allowed police to trace DNA found at the crime scene to similar DNA they had in their system. Think of it as looking for DNA that wasn't the same but similar to the original DNA at the crime scene. They had a match. Christopher Franklin was charged in 2008 for a felony weapons charge. His DNA matched, however he was too young to commit the crimes, so police turned towards his father, Lonnie Franklin Jr. Lonnie Franklin Jr.'s DNA wasn't in the database, so police needed a sample of his DNA in order to prove whether or not it was him. LAPD put him under 24-hour surveillance. They spotted him eating at a pizzeria, so an officer pretending to be a waiter collected plates, silverware, glassware, half-eaten food. When they ran the DNA on the slice of half-eaten pizza, it came back as a match. The Grim Sleeper who had terrorized South Central Los Angeles was finally identified as Lonnie Franklin Jr. When police arrested him, they also had a warrant to search his house and garage. This is where they found a stash of trophies that Lonnie had collected from his victims, such as jewelry, IDs, and photographs of victims. One of the biggest pieces of evidence was a picture of the only surviving victim, Anitra Margaret Washington. When Anitra gave her witness testimony, one of the biggest pieces of evidence was that she remembered that perpetrator had taken a picture of her, and that same picture was in Lonnie Franklin Jr.'s garage. After Lonnie was arrested, he was convicted on 10 counts of murder. When the trial began, he was found guilty and sentenced to death. He would be found dead in his cell on March 28, 2020. While many people would argue Lonnie isn't the worst serial killer ever, I would say his treatment of women is justification enough. But something I discovered in my research is that the picture of Anitra Washington wasn't the only picture that was found in Lonnie's garage. 180 different pictures of women were found. Many of them were Jane Does, and others were women that were reported missing years ago. This raises the question of whether Lonnie, the Grim Sleeper, was even inactive for 14 years, or did he really just kill without the police knowing? It will be impossible to know, as Lonnie took the secrets with him to the grave, but one thing is for certain, the pictures of most of these women don't look like they were even alive when he took them.
These people are not suspects. We don't even know if they're victims, but we do know this. Lonnie Franklin's reign of terror in the city of Los Angeles, which spanned well over 2 decades,
and as always, thank you for watching.